Answers of an Alien from Andromeda, Video 157, September, 2018. Friends, a lot of interesting stuff happening right now. Large movement of spacecraft in the system participating in actions to support CG actions and commercial supplies with TAOS, with the largest docks close to the Sun, Jupiter, Saturn and Neptune. New licenses to exploit raw materials on these uninhabitable planets are happening given the new category achieved by your solar system. All this movement can be seen and recorded by your amateur astronomers because the official observatories will not divulge any type of record to the public. The fact that Mars is cosmopolitan, the presence of TAOS as a permanent member of the system, the preparation of Venus to accelerate its cooling, and the upgrade planet Earth, mean that there are 3 inhabited planets and 1 in training, in a relatively small system like this. This fact puts the solar system at a more complex level and under a much more comprehensive level of supervision by the CG. Your agents will use all means to ensure that this information is not available to the public until the planned control strategies and subjugation that they wish to maintain are implemented. But on that point they are being heavily pressured by CG initiatives on many fronts. On the offshore islands of Japan, one of the man-made disasters was tested, fueled by hundreds of tons of conventional explosives camouflaged in an armored ship that was intentionally sunk as a common freighter. These details I am revealing are public domain by the Arcturians and Pleiadians of the Antarcticobr, so I see no impediment to mention. From now on, with our colony on Mars, we from Manchik are no longer considered simple foreign volunteer units because now we are locals, inhabitants of the solar system as you Earth. This gives me the chance to speak a little more openly without going through the entire CG roles that our fleet passed before. Specifically on your planet, you are observing and witnessing the gradual changes that are taking place. The planet is no longer fully in the inertial self-control that has remained thousands of years, and this fact will be felt in a period of time that the planet's nature is solving by itself. The manifestations of nature are oscillating because they depend on the internal variables and the variables created by the solar system itself. The climate that depends on your oceans and your currents is messed up at this moment of diametric growth and will generate random atmospheric disturbances in much greater volume and intensity than you used to have. Be alert in your regions because these are inevitable conditions until the planet reaches the new equilibrium. Questions. Mythi, since the Moon has a weak geomagnetic field, why at certain points on the surface are magnetic points with very strong fields that science cannot explain? Alfredo, the Moon in its formation during the liquid state orbiting the Earth disorderly, attracted during all its cooling metallic materials of composition more compact for the surface. These large accumulated columns of what you call rare earths, is neodymium kind, combined with other ferrous ores, several kilometers long below the surface. These metal towers form these points of strong magnetic fields at some points on the lunar surface. The Moon contains a large amount of rare metals that joined in the merger with a large moon of a wandering planet that struck the planet Earth, which caused its formation. Mythi, between the 9th and 10th of this month we had a passage of the Moon in front of the Sun from an angle visible by the SDO probe, and that same probe captured a passage of similar diameter crossing the Sun in the opposite direction a few hours later. Could you shed light on what might have been? Carlos, some large circular spaceships of Aldebaran are parked next to the Sun during this period, and by the indicated direction was the shadow of one of them that was registered approaching by your probe. CB showed me another photo of another probe of yours, where the image of one of those has been registered parked close your Sun, followed by many service spaceships from other fleets. These spacecrafts will work on the manipulation of Venus in its new orbit, serving as a directional counterweight to avoid orbital influences on other planets in the system. Mythi, who are the beings called the Men in Black, suppressing UFO and Sasquatch proof and much more? Are they Earthlings from our own government? Or are they humanoid robots commanded by Greys or reptilians? Joe, these are agents from your own government, not commanded by any other race. Mythi, as a level 5 social scientist, what have your people found to be the best techniques to overcome addictive behaviors in level 0 societies? especially with quitting cigarettes or alcohol? And another big problem for many is addiction to television and other Hollywood fare. How about overcoming them? And normalcy bias too? Thomas, the moderate use of fumes in beverages is not really a problem. Many breeds maintain similar customs. The problem is the abuses caused by the social imbalance and the depression that this causes in the most susceptible. The influences imposed by your dominant classes with biased movies is a matter of common sense in judging this information received. Each one is free to develop his or her own concepts, and the greater the individual knowledge acquired, the more the concepts will interpret a universalistic reality. Light can illuminate, dazzle or blind, depends on how prepared the observer's eyes are. Mithy, what do you regard as our greatest achievements as a species here on Earth? Jerry, I see as the greatest achievement of the 34% of the current population, the awareness reached at similar level by dozens of ethnicities in a short time, a not very common fact to see happen. If your question has a technological connotation, I say that you are averaging all zero-level colonies at the threshold of passing to level 1, neither more nor less. Mithy, what is minimum age to be an adult in your society? Is there something in your society which is considered as a taboo in our society? Can you please tell us some in detail? Nikhil, in society from level 1 and above, the passage from child to adult happens to become much less noticed except for the physical size and willingness to know novelties. If your question is sexually suggestive, they are fully aware of whether or not they are sexually related until they are defined in the type of activities they choose for their careers. They seek the coexistence according to the balance of the mental development and not exactly the anatomical details, that is, they can go on living together as a couple of students for life, and not as teacher and student where only one gives and the other just receive. Balance leads to happiness, so this is a concept by which more soulmates are easily formed. Mithy, what is the CG typical approach when discovering a new breed of high-level civilization with a functional government and society that has no idea about the community Galactica, and does the CG have a type of scouting missions that go to unknown regions that the CG would wish to gather intel on? Marcus, the CG as a whole covers predefined physically areas, but there are intelligent probes that are launched into unfamiliar regions to capture signals from civilizations and communicate with them in their own dialects in real time. If a civilization is advanced enough, it will be cataloged for contact implementation when that region has the possibility of being assigned to a new regional CG to be created. The expansion of CG coverage happens uninterruptedly, from implementation of observation in zero-level colonies as well as in planets with civilizations in equilibrium equivalent to level 1 or higher. It is estimated in 2 billion years to achieve coverage that can be called universal, with respect to the civilizations that inhabit it. Hello Mithy, what is the purpose of the dolmens? Massive stone buildings with a small round hole. Who and when did they build them? Does it make sense to meditate near them? Thank you. Pavel, I'm not sure I've mentioned that, but these rocks were excavated with beams of energy and were mounted with anti-gravitational techniques by former space explorers, using the bizarre architecture requested by the regional natives, to give them a defense of animal attacks and to survive the cold that took over that region in those times. This was at the time of the saber-tooth among other great mammals carnivorous, because with the cooling of the region the natural hunting balance of these animals has undergone a sudden change. They are relics of your so-called Stone Age, but have absolutely nothing supernatural which can be used as a means of meditation or any other. Mithy, can you elaborate on who and how of the rapid population expansion on Mars in the human reptiles colony? You see, the mixed colony that your elites maintain on Mars is of reptilian responsibility, and we do not have direct access to the exact census, but lately they are constantly expanding and receiving more and more inhabitants. Mithy, are the elites that are fleeing to Mars allowed to practice their horrific rituals as they do on this planet? If so, why is this allowed? Andrew, as I mentioned, Your elites are part of a mixed colony as aggregates of the reptilians, and this makes them a problem specifically for them being a sovereign race caring for their own affairs. What happens inside their facilities is not linked to the attributes of the regional CG. Dear Mythi, how is art practiced by our space brothers? What is its meaning and importance in universe? Is it only an individual hobby or exist famous representatives of beautiful art pieces, which decor the homes or other places as here? Are crop circles done in other parts of the universe as well? Andri, art exists on all levels of existence, regardless of race, humanoid or not. There is trading between planets of different galaxies including, in the area of artistic objects. Objects sculpted in exotic materials, paints that react to touch or light, hybridization of living exotic flowers, which communicate by aroma and color and that react to touch or to brain waves. As you can see, a lot in the realm of art is available across all galaxies. Nothing specific or trendy, has everything for all trends. And on crop circles, there are inhabited and uninhabited planets with ideal surfaces to be executed, and even there are planets where it is almost impossible to find a place that no longer contains some design executed by some visiting race during the millennia. Interesting places to visit. Mythi, how does one operate quantum physics correctly in order to achieve a specific goal? And what kind of attitude, feeling or mindset do we have to be in order to make quantum energy manipulate matter? Could you please elaborate more on all of this in a practical way, so that we can now begin to correctly experiment with quantum mechanics routinely? Thank you. David, it's hard to explain a technique that you might interpret as simple. Quantum manipulation by the mind is a direct consequence of the release of brain functions. This happens at different stages of development and is related to the genetic changes inherent in raising a breed level. For those who already have some activation, a simple exercise that can serve as initial training is the ability to change the direction of a small flame inside a container free of air movement. With the training time, the person with some control of quantum ability liberated could make the flame follow the rhythm of a song, increasing, diminishing and leaning to any desired side. At the level of your average cerebral activation, few people could develop this characteristic. The human genome has 4,000 known defects such as scoliosis and spina bifida. Each human carries about 50 of the 4,000 defects. Were the defects created purposely and why are there so many? Paul, the humanoid genome on your planet can be considered a patchwork, sewn behind time and accumulating defects congenitally. In addition to that fact, you have been criminally exposed to experiments in your waters and food increasing the permeability levels of your genomes. This can only be corrected when they have access to the structural detoxification processes that can be deployed when the planet is already part of the CG, unfortunately not before that. Please Mythi, regarding the all controversy about moon landings, can you tell us from where the second crew of the mission, the one which sacrificed themselves, was taking off? Yurish, they took off from a base in the former USSR, as all missions were a joint venture between USA and USSR, with the concurrence and cooperation of all the elites involved. Mythi, can you please tell us what kind of pulses are these, and to emit them apparently from Antarctica? Yurish, the Antarctica base has made corrections to the geomagnetic mesh in order to minimize more catastrophic consequences, aiming to stabilize extremes during this geological change that the planet is going through. These are mild changes but help to protect communities from severely damaging consequences. This has neutralized some actions planned by your elites in the artificial enlargement and use of natural disasters provided for the purpose of depopulation of entire regions. Much has been done by the predictions of the Antarctica Base Intelligence Service. Mythi, there is news of a massive sandstorm happening on Mars, which researchers suspect may last months. Does this affect the cosmopolitan communities on Mars? Wilhelm, these storms are all events predicted during the atmospheric changes on Mars, warming regions and layers of the atmosphere generating strong veils in the equalization of these changes in temperatures. All the communities installed there took their precautions with force fields isolating the areas they wanted to keep clean from the sand and vapor. Mithi, we have a site here in Israel that called in Hebrew Gilgal Rafam or Rum El-Hiri in Arabic. It's a huge stone circles, that can only be seen best from the air, estimated to be 5,000 years old. Could you tell us more about its true origin and purpose? Thank you. Yuval, many drawings and basic structures were made in this on other planets, some for fun, others to gift local native communities of the time. Certain structures like this in question were not catalogued because they did not represent anything culturally relevant for registration. But by design it looks like an unfinished containment pods for animals hunted by reptilians, as they exist on other hunting planets, but would have to be much older than this estimated age. Friends, I'll try to come more often to answer your questions. Stay all well and always prepared to events. We will be here always.